Well, hello and welcome to Wednesdays in the Word. If this is your first time ever tuning in with us, Wednesdays in the Word is a summer devotional YouTube series that we've been doing for 3 years now. This is actually Season 3, Episode 1. Last summer we talked about the topic of unity, and so each week we looked at a different aspect of unity and how that plays into our lives as Christians. But this summer we are actually going to be looking at a book of the Bible, and that book is Galatians. We're going to be looking at the whole book of Galatians over the course of 7 weeks. We're just so excited to dive into that and see what the Apostle Paul has to tell us there. And so for week 1, we're actually going to look at Galatians chapter 1, verse 1 through 16. And so as I was first looking at these verses and text, something that I was giving some thought to is one of my favorite movies I've ever seen, which is Star Wars Episode 3, The Revenge of the Sith. And there's this one character in that movie called Anakin Skywalker. And throughout the whole movie, he ends up, turning from the good to a good guy to a bad guy. And one of the things that this character says about him is that he was deceived by this lie, and everyone was deceived by this lie. And when I heard that and thought about that, I was just thinking, I wonder if a lot of us have had that happen in our own lives as Christians, or maybe people that we know, where there's been this lie that has crept into the church or crept in around us, and it's caused people to be deceived by it. And so that's what's happening here in the book of Galatians, and the Apostle Paul is going to address that. And so first we're going to look at Galatians chapter 1, verses 6 to 9, which reads like this. I am astonished that you are so quickly deserting him who called you in the grace of Christ and are turning to a different gospel. Not that there is another one, but there are some who trouble you and want to distort the gospel of Christ. But even if we or an angel from heaven should preach to you a gospel contrary to the one we preach to you, let him be accursed. As we have said before, so now I say again, if anyone is preaching to you a gospel contrary to the one you received, let him be accursed. And so here in this letter, the Apostle Paul is writing this letter to this church. And so if you don't know who the Apostle Paul was, he was this apostle who got saved, and he was this evangelist who planted churches and was going all around the world preaching the gospel. And here he planted this church in Galatia, and he's writing this letter to them because there was this group of people that were going around called the Judaizers, and they were going around and they were spreading this false lie, this false truth that believing in Jesus wasn't enough. They were saying that you need to believe in Jesus, but you need to obey the Old Testament law, you need to keep it up on all the rules and the regulations that it had, and that they were adding to what Jesus did on the cross. And so I think many of us have seen a lot of Judaizers in our lives today, or maybe it's not going around and telling people to keep the Jewish law, but I think a lot of people are going around and having this Christian law where believing in Jesus isn't really enough. You have to do more. You have to do these extra things in order to truly be a Christian. And so this begs the question, is there really something more that we have to do than just believe on Jesus? Are there extra things that we have to do? And so let's see what the Apostle Paul has to say to that question. Galatians chapter 1, verses 6 to 7 says, I am astonished that you are so quickly deserting him who called you in the grace of Christ and are turning to a different gospel. Not that there is another one, but there are some who trouble you and want to distort the gospel of Christ. You see, the Apostle Paul here is saying that there is only one gospel. There is no other gospel. There is no other way to be saved. There's one gospel, and it's through believing on Jesus Christ. And any Judaizer that goes around trying to distort that truth is a liar, and it is not true, because there is no other gospel than the gospel of Jesus Christ. Because there was this one guy 2,000 years ago who sought to destroy that gospel. He lived his entire life trying to persecute Christians, to kill them, to turn people away from Jesus Christ, and that was his life mission. And the one who wrote this letter to the church in Galatia was that person. The Apostle Paul once lived to persecute the church. This is what he says about his former life. For I would have you know, brothers, that the gospel that was preached by me is not man's gospel. For I did not receive it from any man, nor as I taught it, but I received it through a revelation of Jesus Christ. For you've heard of my former life in Judaism, how I persecuted the church of God violently and tried to destroy it. And I was advancing in Judaism beyond many of my own age among my people. So extremely zealous was I for the traditions of my fathers. But when he who set me apart before I was born and who called me in the grace of Christ was pleased to reveal his Son to me in order that I might preach him among the Gentiles. You see, the Apostle Paul once lived to persecute the church, but then he met Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ revealed himself to him, and the Apostle Paul was saved and his life was changed forever. And he went on to live as the Apostle Paul, who would preach the gospel to so many people and planted so many churches and truly lived a life for the gospel. And did you know that Jesus Christ was pleased to reveal himself to Jesus? This is what the Apostle Paul says. But when he who set me apart before I was born and who called me by his grace was pleased to reveal his Son to me in order that I might preach him among the Gentiles. You see, Jesus Christ looked down and he saw this person that was persecuting him and persecuting his church, and he was pleased to reveal himself to him. And do you know why that was? It was because Jesus loved the Apostle Paul. He didn't want him living in this state of rebellion and hate towards his people. He wanted to save him, redeem him, and bring him back to his Creator. And he also wanted him to live a life for the gospel, spreading the gospel, preaching the gospel. And the good news is that Jesus was pleased to reveal himself to you too. And so if you don't know Jesus, let me encourage you, hear the gospel, that Jesus died for you, so that if you would believe in him, you would be saved. Hear that truth. Know that Jesus was pleased to reveal himself to you. And if you do know Jesus and you're following him already, live for that truth. Know that Jesus was pleased to reveal himself to you, and he wants you to live a life for him, for the gospel. So may we learn that truth from Galatians chapter 1, verses 1 to 16, that there is no other gospel. There is one gospel through Jesus Christ. Let's live for that and let's defend that, because there is no other way but through Jesus Christ. And so thank you for tuning in for week 1 of Wednesdays in the Word. We look forward to seeing you next week.